Good morning. Please join me in the lighting of the chalice. Your words are in the service. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Whoever you are, do you hear the voice calling you, calling us? That voice which calls us together here today in this room, made holy by our presence and by the sacred breath that we share in this space, in our singing, in our speaking, and in our silence. That voice which calls us to remember that we are not alone and that we are inextricably linked to all other life, woven into a vast tapestry of existence of which we are a powerful, integral, and holy part. Welcome. My name is Charlie Tyler. I'm the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Low Country. It's my pleasure to welcome you here. In a few moments, I'm going to ask those of you who are guests and visitors for first or second time, if you're willing to stand and give us your name, that would be good so that we can know that you're here. take note of you and where you're from, because there's probably other people in the room that are from there too. We've noticed that. So I want to welcome you and have you be a part of this service today. There's a couple things that I want to do before we go too terribly far. Clay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you right now. You have some announcements?
Good morning, I'm Clay Barnard, President of the Board, and if you have darts this morning and you don't like the color, there's the target. I do want to thank the committee that's worked on this for so long. This is a group I asked back in August. I said this would be a 1 month or 2 month assignment, and we're into the 7th or 8th month on it. So they've done a great job. I want to thank the donors. We're not done, but we've got a good start anyhow. And I want to thank that group that worked this week: John Shepard, Steve and Andrea Clark, Gary Green, David and Sarah. David and Sarah was here this morning at 7 o'clock trying to clean up the area. Pretty dusty. Steve and Andrea were here last night also trying to clean up. Steve was mopping the foyer area, and Andrea was doing a punch list. It's the best punch list I have ever seen. 2 pages, single spaced. You couldn't have a better architect create a punch list. Thank you. The baffles are going to go up in March, and it's going to be loud and noisy after church today. I'm sure you've heard that. But once the new baffles come up, there's a sample of the new baffle in the back. That'll quiet things down quite a bit. And then going forward, we're going to have a new committee, and maybe people that who are on the old committee can join. But I've asked Beth, who's on our board. Where's Beth? Here. There she is. I've asked Beth, who's just joined the board, to chair a group that's really going to take control of what happens on those walls. And we're going to be very careful. It's not going to be pin up everything you want, but the group is going to have a kind of a solid philosophy about what to do and where to go next. So with that, thank you very much, guys.
So while Clay has a target on his back, I'm going to stand over here in case things get out of control. An announcement I've been asked to give to you as well, too. This is concerning Indivisible. It is now coming back into our sanctuary March 9th at 10 a.m. here in our UU sanctuary. And Reverend Dr. Neil Jones is going to be speaking at that meeting on the 9th. And we're looking forward to hearing what he has to say as we continue to make a difference in our community. So those of you who are guests and visitors, I would like for you to know that in a way that's beyond our wildest understanding, the universe has conspired to bring you into one of the most warm and welcoming and compassionate groups of people that I have ever experienced in my life, and most of you that keep coming back tell me the same. So those of you that are guests, I hope that you leave here having felt that in some kind of way, either specifically or generally, so that you may know that this is a different place. This is a unique place in the world. And I thank you for making your way here. I'm going to ask that if you're in my far right section of our sanctuary, if you are a first or second time visitor, I would love for you to stand and give us your name and tell us where you're from. Yes, please.
This is my wife Barbara. I'm Richard. This is our first time here in 5 years. From 2010 to 19, we were here every year from Canada, but because of a whole bunch of things, we haven't been here for 5 years, and we're just so glad to be back and see some of our old friends still here.
Thank you. Welcome here. Anybody else on that side? In the middle? Any first-time visitors willing?
Second time.
Yes, if you would, please. Second time, absolutely.
Yeah, we mentioned ourselves last week, but we'll do it again.
Okay.
Randy and Kathy Zipser. I had mentioned last time we were from southern Delaware, but that was after we retired. Before that, just for note, we spent most of our working life in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
Welcome back. Twice in a row, we consider it a habit. Anybody else in the center? On my far left, your far right. Yes, ma'am. If you would, please, Mary.
Good morning. My name is Mary Reed. I am originally from Rhode Island. You may have heard of it. I'm just really pleased to be here to listen and to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others who were bashful before but have courage now? Thank you and welcome, and pray that we continue to be drawing ourselves closer together in a whole and as a unit, and I bid you welcome. Reverend Hood, if you would please, your opening words.
Good morning. What a great spring day, huh? They're not saying that in Maine. Or anywhere probably north of the Mason-Dixon line. But this is the kind of day when you want to be in the South. I'm going to do things a little differently this morning. I'm going to start with a trivia contest. And I'm going to give you a quote. And if that quote is familiar to you, please don't shout out where it's from. Just raise your hand, okay? Here's the quote. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. Wow, okay. I thought I might be able to say that the only people that would recognize it meant that you were over 70 years old. But I do see some younger faces that raised their hand. For those of you that don't know where that came from, when you come to talk back after church, I will reveal the source of that quote. The quote came to me because the sermon today is really going to be in two parts: facts and fantasy. And I decided it's probably a good idea if I separate them out a little bit. So I'm going to give you facts now instead of opening words. And then when I come back, if you haven't walked out, I will give you some fantasy about the same topic. I want to talk about the person probably who has influenced Unitarian Universalism certainly more than any other American. And I thought about, well, what about Martin Luther King? But I really do think that Henry David Thoreau probably has exerted a greater, longer, and larger influence on our movement and who we are today and what we stand for and so forth. And now I just want to give you very quickly just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. He was born on July 12th, 1817. His father was probably a farmer. He was born in Concord, Massachusetts, a rural community at the time. But his father also made pencils. And throughout Henry's life, when he needed a few dollars, which was most of the time, he worked in his father's pencil factory, making pencils. In fact, became an expert on creating a different and cheaper kind of lead that went into pencils. And like a lot of good Concord boys who were very bright, he went to Harvard University, and he graduated in 1837. He never did get his sheepskin diploma because Harvard charged $5 for the sheepskin itself, and Henry David Thoreau refused to pay the $5. So while he has a degree, he never has anything he could hang on the wall. He was always somewhat of an outsider. He never had, other than a small thinking writers group, he was never part of a larger social movement. He never married. There's not a lot of social history about him. But after Harvard, he became a school teacher for a very short distance, very small amount of time, but he quit because the Concord school system, or whatever it was called at that time, required corporal punishment if a student got out of line. And Thoreau said no, he could not possibly administer corporal punishment to children. And he and the school system parted ways. He kind of did a number of things as a college graduate, never really found what we might call his niche. But in 1841, that's 4 years after he retired, after he graduated, he moved in with his best friend. And he would call him Waldo, his best friend Waldo. We know him today as Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was his closest friend throughout life and guided Henry to maybe write some more and do some thinking and deliver some lectures. And that's how Henry made whatever few dollars he could make that he couldn't make in the pencil factory. He always wanted and focused on trying to live a simple life, and that's what he's famous for today. And I'm screwing my notes here. In 1841, he moved in, and 3 years later, he decided to spend 2 years living in a small cabin in Concord, on Walden Pond, for which everybody nods their head. Oh yeah, Henry David Thoreau, yeah, Walden. And he kept a journal, and he worked on that journal all his life. However, he really was not a hermit in that sense. He made several trips. One of the things I found was he went on vacation. And he was a man of eminent good taste. While he was in the wilderness, he wanted to take a vacation, and he went to Maine.
Just like you.
He ran afoul of the tax collector in Concord because he refused to pay his poll tax, spent a night in jail until someone who has never really been identified in history paid his poll tax for him. He contracted in 1835 tuberculosis, and he was never a healthy person. And after leaving Walden, after 2 years, he spent most of his time revising his journal, working in the pencil factory, but for the last probably 2 or 3 years, he really was an invalid and did not really lead a very, what today we would call a fulfilling life. He died on May 6, 1862, at the age of 44. He died very young, and he was not particularly well remembered at the time. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But he was not a hero. He was not a Ralph Waldo Emerson, who by that time was very famous. To some degree, Henry died in obscurity. That's the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Our opening hymn is, if you would join us, is number 128. Please rise as you are within
For all that is on high, we sing our thanks and praise. So here comes some more of the facts. And I'm sorry that I'm going to miss the part about the fantasy. But in 1846, the United States went to war against Mexico. And although there were many Americans who supported the Mexican-American War, there were others who did not. Ministers and scholars and people who were anti-slavery were against it. Even Abraham Lincoln, who wasn't president yet, felt that this war was unethical. And another person who was against the war very much was Henry David Thoreau, the man that Reverend Dick Hood has already started speaking about. And he even mentioned one of the most popular stories about Thoreau is the one that because Thoreau thought that this war was wrong, he refused to pay his taxes to the American government. Henry David Thoreau was raised a Unitarian, so I believe that he was following his conscience. And because it's against the law to not pay your taxes, he was, like Dick said, he was arrested and he was put in jail. And then his friend, Waldo, who he called Waldo, the Unitarian minister, Ralph Waldo Emerson, went to visit him and said to him, "What are you doing? You have the money. Why are you staying here in this jail cell when you can just pay the taxes and get out?" And this is when Thoreau famously answered, "The question is not, what am I doing in here? It is, what are you doing out there?" He said, "What I'm doing is I'm making a public statement. I am refusing to support this war." And then, as Dick mentioned, much to his frustration, many of us do know what happened next, was that one of Thoreau's relatives, we believe, never really quite sure who it was, but somebody came and paid the taxes for him because they could not stand seeing him in jail. So he got out. And it was when he got out that he wrote the essay called Civil Disobedience, which was all about the experience that he had in that jail cell. And in that essay, he explains why sometimes it is necessary to disobey a law when the law is unfair, and that silently accepting unjust governance is really just the same as submitting to it. So I'm going to digress a little bit because I'm going to switch subjects to 60 years later, on the other side of the world, in South Africa, Mohandas Gandhi was getting a job as a lawyer. And although he was allowed to work, Gandhi was from India, and the laws in South Africa treated all Indians as second-class people, and even black Africans, although they were the majority of the population, they were being treated even worse than the people from India. And Gandhi did not think that these laws were fair. So just like Thoreau, he protested, and he too was arrested. And somewhere along the line, Gandhi read Civil Disobedience, which was written by Henry David Thoreau, and this essay inspired him to never give up, even when the challenges seemed too high to overcome. And then Gandhi died in 1948, which was just about the time that the young minister, Martin Luther King, who was briefly mentioned already, was beginning to speak up for African Americans who were still being denied their rights in this country. So So many people were angry and they were trying to change the laws through violence. But Dr. King was very passionate about making change peacefully. And just like Gandhi, Dr. King was leading demonstrations and nonviolent protests and showing people how you can make changes in the laws in a peaceful way. As a Christian, as a true Christian, Martin Luther King was inspired by Jesus and the Bible, but he was also inspired by Henry David Thoreau. And in his autobiography, Martin Luther King wrote this. He wrote, "During my student days, I read Henry David Thoreau's essay on civil disobedience for the first time. Here, in this courageous New Englander's refusal to pay his taxes and his choice of going to jail rather than supporting a war that would spread slavery's territory into Mexico, I made my first contact with the theory of nonviolent resistance. Fascinated by the idea of refusing to cooperate with an evil system, I was so deeply moved that I reread Thoreau's work several times. I became convinced that non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good." And Martin Luther King went on to say that as a result of these writings and his personal witness, we are the heirs of a legacy of creative protest. The teachings of Henry David Thoreau came alive in our civil rights movement, whether expressed in a sit-in at the lunch counters, a freedom ride into Mississippi, or a bus boycott into Montgomery, Alabama. These are outgrowths of Thoreau's insistence that evil must be resisted and that no moral man can patiently adjust to injustice. Civil disobedience can work. There is no doubt. Gandhi's movement eventually led to India's independence in the 1940s. Dr. King's movement led to the passage of the Civil Rights Acts in the 1960s, and it was a sustained campaign of civil disobedience that eventually led to the end of the Vietnam War. But although we have seen it work, the central question of this essay, written in 1849 by Henry David Thoreau, still challenges us today. And the question is, how should we respond to a government that pursues policies that we believe to be immoral? Thoreau, Gandhi, and King were three activists who saw civil disobedience as a path to resistance. If they were alive today, I don't know, what would they think? I think that they would be sad to see the changes in our environment. I think that it would be very hard for them to understand why we are not passing gun laws to stop these mass shootings. They would see that we are still trying to prove that Black Lives Matter, and that in some ways we are really still at war at the Mexican-American border. Maybe it's time for us to carry the torch, to follow in the footsteps of Thoreau, Gandhi, and King, three prophetic leaders in different times, in different places, who all found the power of peace. Thoreau influenced Gandhi, and then they both influenced Martin Luther King. May their words and deeds now influence and inspire us. Amen. And
It occurs to me, just for a moment, how many people have named their sons Waldo? Could you raise your hand? This is the time that we do things for our community, for ourselves, our church, and those around us. And the ways we do that is to collect food for Sandalwood Food Pantry and Bluffton Self-Help. So if you want anything and have not yet left it, please leave it at the table. Beyond that, the important thing is to support our church and by giving your donations. So please be ready as we pass the basket. If you've been here for the first or second time, please let the basket pass. Thank you. thank you for your generosity.
This is the time in our service where we share our joys and concerns, and we share our joys so that we can celebrate with one another. And in sharing our concerns, we hope that that will somehow diminish some of the burdens that we carry. So if you have a joy and or concern, please come forward. Take a stone from the basket, give us your name, and briefly share your joy and or concern. And as hard as it may be, please refrain from any announcements or political statements. And then place your stone in the cairn.
Good morning. I'm Tish, and I have two actual joys. One is more of a relief. The first one is my youngest grandson finally received his associate's degree in marketing. We're very proud of him. And the second is my older grandson had an incident where his roommate was out walking her dog, and the dog and the girl were attacked by a rabid raccoon. So he went out to help, and they all were bitten. Fortunately, they found the raccoon. It was definitely rabid, and they are undergoing their shots, and they're going to be fine. So I'm relieved over that.
Good morning. I apologize in advance for this will be a bit lengthy as our care committee has been really busy lately. Marietta Kerr has COVID-19 and we're really concerned about her because she also has COPD and she's 90 years old. So she says so far she only has mild symptoms right now. Janice Alden, one of our past presidents, was in a serious car accident last Thursday. Both cars were totaled, but thankfully the people in the cars were not hurt. But Janice's beloved dog, Zen, was in the car also, and Zen died in the crash. So, of course, Janice is heartbroken. Last Thursday, Mary Watson had open heart surgery. 2 days before the surgery, she and her husband had to say goodbye to their dog, Buddy. Mary didn't want me to say anything to you until she, quote, survived, unquote, the surgery. The surgery was really a serious one. It took about 7 hours, and she had a triple bypass. The last I heard was that the surgery was a success, and Mary was recovering in intensive care at Hilton Head Hospital. Kathy Zeiser asked me to share these words. Thank everyone again for their words of comfort and for supplying dinners. The fridge is full, as is my heart. Bud continues to deteriorate, but hospice keeps him comfortable. Our 3 children have been here, and he was able to FaceTime with his grandchildren. Even the granddogs have visited. Our home has been so full of love, and I am so grateful to everyone. David wrote us about John and Judy Krause. And if you would like to know more about how Judy's doing and have her address, please see Phyllis Baxter. And I think that's it. Thank you. I
I was wondering about the appropriateness of my message. This is Joys and Concerns. This is a concern. We're not supposed to make political announcements, but dare I say that we just had two up there. So what I'm going to say is pretty much of a segue for our message from Anne and from Dick. Usually I don't talk about books that I've read, but I do mention books sometimes in our after sermon discussion. And the book that I'm reading is definitely worth mentioning for educational purposes. So I wanted to bring that forward to you. The title of the book is How Civil Wars Start by Barbara F. Walters. And I believe, and many of you may think as well, that we're living during a time of civil war. And for educational purposes, I very much recommend this book. The author has done some research across the world to recount how civil wars start. There's many books out there about how the United States now is very similar to 1933 Berlin. There's much that you can read about that if you're interested. But this author's research tells us why we are living within a civil war and what may brew for the future. So I just think it's a good educational book for people to read. If anybody would like to join in discussion, there's going to be a book club discussion at the end of March. And in order that I not make a more political statement, you can come to me later and I will tell you the name of the book club.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah, and we just had a really awesome blessing last weekend. So I'm originally from Wisconsin, and so my family threw me a baby shower here in Bluffton. So my parents came down from Wisconsin. I have 3 sisters. They came down from Wisconsin. My niece, who recently moved to Florida, she came up. And my dear aunt and uncle, who are from, Marengo, Illinois. I don't know if you know where that is. It's between Rockford and Chicago. They came down, too. So I was really blessed and had some friends there, too. And, this, never happens where I have everyone all at once. So I got to hug all my sisters and my aunt and my mom and dad. And they stayed a few days. That's why I wasn't here last Sunday. So, what?
The dog.
Oh, even the dog came. My sister's new dog, Macy. She's so cute. So I just felt really blessed and wanted to share my happiness. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, if you will now join me in the back of your book, number 459 for the affirmation today. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to repair both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and know the goodness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. And now Reverend Dick Hood.
I think it was just after Ollie and I got back from Maine, so it would have been probably last October. Susie, our mail lady, in Sun City, I'm sure there's lots of mail ladies in Sun City, but Susie is ours, and she delivered a very unusual letter. When I went out to get it in the mailbox, first of all, the envelope almost started to self-destruct in my hand. And I looked at it, and the strangest thing was it had a 1-cent stamp on it. Wow, pretty unusual. I opened it up, and son of a gun, it was a letter to me from Henry David Thoreau. You laugh. True. Dear Reverend Hood, or can I call you Dick? I heard that you are going to preach a sermon about me at your local congregation in South Carolina. Please be sure your information is accurate. Much has been written and spoken about me over the years, and some of it is just plain, well, we'll call it fanciful. I am not some radical anarchist that some portray me. I'm also not just a hippie who believes in shunning society, eating certain mushrooms, and practicing free love. Far from it. I am a thinker, an observer, and, if you will, a philosopher. This is your warning. Get it right. Henry David Thoreau. Whoa. I replied, Dear Henry, I'm not a person that usually believes in miracles, not like one of our other ministers, Reverend Job, who constantly talks about miracles. But I'm not sure how else I could explain your letter. I hear your concern, and I will try my best to be accurate. So let's start with a simple question. Are you a Unitarian? Plop that in the mail, just Henry David Thoreau, Concord, Massachusetts. A week later, Dear Dick, second letter appears in the mailbox. Are you serious? Not a nice way to start a letter. I take my inspiration from many world religions, especially Hinduism. However, I can see where you might make the mistake about calling me a Unitarian. I graduated from Harvard, a Unitarian school. My best friend Waldo, well, you know him as Ralph Waldo Emerson, but we friends call him Waldo, well, is or was a Unitarian minister. Well, it really was. He left the clergy because he couldn't take all the, well, stuff that went with ministry. I could have used another word. My other best friend is Ellery. You know him as William Ellery Channing, the most famous Unitarian minister of all ages, even yours. Some call me a transcendentalist, and they're probably right, and we transcendentalists have a lot of Unitarian members, but not me. I cannot be constrained by organized religion, or for that matter, by organized government. I appreciate your quest for accuracy. Do you have more questions? Henry. Hey, why not? Write them back. Dear Henry, did you once go to jail? Give me details. Dear Reverend Dick, yeah, I went for jail once, but just overnight. We have up here in Concord a particularly vicious tax, a poll tax. It seems that if you don't pay this tax, you can't vote. Well, I can't stand that, and I can't stand that we're thinking about going to war, and I certainly can't stand that insidious institution of slavery. So I refuse to pay that poll tax for 6 years. Sam Staples, that not-so-friendly constable, paid me a visit and demanded that I pay the tax. When I refused, he took me to jail. Well, the next day someone, I don't know who, paid my tax, and Sam let me go. But it won't stop me from protesting, particularly about slavery, which I think is a serious illness on the American psyche. Keep those questions coming. Henry. Dear friend Henry, I replied, so you stayed in seclusion for 2 years in Walden Pond, observing nature and living simply. Did you enjoy your hermit lifestyle? Oh, Richard, he replied, you got that all wrong. I was never a hermit. My cabin on Walden Pond was just 2 miles from Concord Village, and I made the trek often to hear lectures and run errands and even to have a brew or two with a friend. Some smarty claimed that I also brought back my dirty laundry, but I remained mute on that charge. I even went once and enjoyed a vacation in Maine. Loved the place. I went to Walden to try to experience simple living, to view nature and its seasons close up. I wanted to strip my life of everything but the bare essentials. And you know what? I think I succeeded. My book still sells. Well, dear Henry, I can testify that your book still sells. I bought a copy of Walden to prepare for my sermon. Amazon, you know. Anyway, I read the first 20 or so pages, and your language was so stilted by my 21st century standards that I couldn't go any further. It was a tough read. But I certainly got the flavor of your pursuit of simplicity and your vivid and lengthy observations about what you observed and what you learned. You have brought about for me and for generations a greater appreciation of nature's beauty and how fragile its elements are. Some say you're even the father of the environmental movement. You should be proud. Dick. Amazon? I thought that was a river. He didn't get all of 21st century stuff. Thanks, I do appreciate your comments. Unfortunately, my copyright has long since passed, and I don't get any royalties anymore. But I know that during my life, I never was recognized very much. I was sort of the town eccentric. My books didn't sell. My lectures weren't much attended, not like the crowds that Waldo used to draw. I'm also running out of stamps. Maybe one last question. Okay, Henry, I replied. One last question, but it's a big one. What would you like me to say about your legacy to my congregation? What do you want to be remembered for? What lessons have you tried to teach us? Dear Dick, you're a sneaky one. That's 3 questions, not 1. But I'll try to summarize as best I can. Dick, teaching lessons is tough sometimes for someone like myself who's questioned authority all my life to now be considered an authority. But I'll take a stab and give you at least 3 lessons that I hope people have remembered about me all these years. First, I would like to stress the importance of living simply. Living a life of as much self-sufficiency that you can muster. Living and life are more than possessions, more than striving for just more of anything material. Things are burdens. The more things, the more burdens. Want to live a life of joy, live simply. Second, if you're looking for God or looking for meaning in life, connect with nature. Look around you. There is beauty and wisdom and miracles everywhere in your sight. That Reverend Job was right, you know. You mentioned him earlier. Miracles are everywhere. And if you can connect with nature, then you will want to commit to preserving and protecting that very nature. Today, you call it environment. We didn't use that term much back then, but we all know what we're talking about. Stop for a moment, every day, and wonder. You'll find solace, you'll find inspiration, and if you like the word, you'll find God. Third, and finally, don't give up on your efforts to make the world better, even if it means sometimes breaking man-made laws. Sometimes small victories can carry immense symbolism. Your work can inspire others to work and work harder. Stand up for what you believe. Make noise. Make a difference. Dick, thanks for your chance for letting me speak. If I could say in just a few words to those who have lived almost 2 centuries after I lived, I would say very simply, be a thinker, be an example, be a worker. Amen. I sent Henry one last letter, and it was returned by the post office marked unknown.
And now, if you would, please take your hymnals back into your hands. Turn with me, if you will, to hymn number 118. And if you're willing and able, please stand and maybe sing together This Little Light of Mine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
It is a joy to have Dick Hood here among us. Dick and Molly bring a part of the community into our hands in ways that are always meaningful and insightful. And I never thought I would listen to a text thread between Henry David Thoreau and Dick Hood in my life, even in a primitive form. Absolutely delightful. By the way, I have all the letters here, and I'm selling copies. Great money. Dick, thank you. You also see, those of you who are guests and visitors, I'd like for you to know that we have a rotating group of speakers that come to us, and so there's always a fresh message, and I would encourage you to be back for some of those messages that are going to be coming to us in the near future. I also want to invite those of you who are guests and visitors to stay for our talk back. That's one of the ways that we interact with the message. I'm curious to see how we're going to interact with Henry David now. He's liable to call in, given what we just heard. But please stay. You also get a chance to see who we are and how we are with each other, and that's probably one of the richest things that we can offer you. I also want you to know that our path to belonging, our new members class, will be starting soon. So those of you that are curious about that, keep an eye out, and you'll be hearing more information. One of the things that I love most about this congregation are those who have a chance to take a lead in them. And when you hear Ann Harrison weave her message in with Dick Hood's, then you understand exactly the kind of people that we are and the way that we want to communicate to this congregation and the responsibilities that we have and take seriously. So thank you for that. Dick, I believe you have some closing remarks, if you would, please.
If I can find them. These are real words. We're out of fantasy now. From Henry David Thoreau. Never look back unless you're planning to go that way. I would rather sit on a pumpkin and have it all to myself than be crowded on a velvet cushion. You must live in the present. Launch yourself on every wave. Find your eternity in each moment. Goodness is the only investment that never fails. You know one more announcement?
I neglected this. Richard and Barbara from Canada, Randy and Kathy and Mary, thank you for being here apart. And I hope that we all get a chance to interact with you in that way that Henry David would approve of. Thank you.
Please stand and join me as we extinguish the chalice. While we extinguish this flame, we still carry in our hearts the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. These are the care together. I want people to hear it again because we keep hearing things
Rob Ryan. When do you leave? It's not in theaters around until midnight after Mother's Day. I've heard it'll come to Netflix or something. Well, I hope it will. Yeah. I just saw clips on it. And American United Separate Church and State did a really good. He was a guest, and he talked about it, and they showed little clips.